It's a pleasure to meet you, Frank. Sister Holmes tells me that you've been having conversations with her at work about our faith, that you're an atheist, and that you have a few questions she couldn't answer. We were happy to talk to people of all beliefs. Or non-belief, as it seems in your case.
Thank y'all for taking the time to meet me, Father, Reverend, what should I call you?
Oh, no need for any titles. My name is Calvin. You can call me Cal or Mr. Jones if it makes you feel more comfortable.
Okay, California. I'm not sure what you've heard about atheists. Jackie seems to have an incorrect impression of us.
I'm sorry to hear that, Frank. I apologize if you were offended by her mistake.
That's fine. I don't blame you. Lots of misconceptions are spread about us through the media and other sources. Anyway, as an atheist, I really have only two questions for any religious person who strikes up a conversation with me. Those questions are, what do you believe, and why do you believe it?
Well, Frank, to be honest, I can't really cover everything I believe about God in just one night, but I'll try to give you a basic rundown.
I understand. I don't expect you to do that. I realize that theology can be a very complex thing.
Well, I don't like to call it that, but we can save the discussion for another time. Basically, I believe that God's name is Jehovah, and that He created all things, the earth, the sea, the stars, the planets, and all life on the earth. I believe He has a son named Jesus who was the first created being and helper to His Father. I believe that there was another angel named Satan who challenged Jehovah's authority to rule over the earth. After corrupting Adam and Eve, Jehovah decided to allow Satan to prove himself. Much like a teacher with a rebellious student. Instead of setting a poor example and simply expelling the student right then and there, he allows the student to make his incorrect ideas apparent, and thus all of the other students can watch and see for themselves. Jehovah also has a rescue plan for mankind in place. That rescue plan is Jesus. He sent Jesus down to earth to live as a perfect human being. Only the sacrifice of a perfect being could atone for the sin of another perfect being. Thus, Jesus' sacrifice provided the ransom and the hope of everlasting life on paradise earth under God's rule. Revelation promises us that there will be no more mourning, no more outcry, no more pain, no more death, not more suffering. Everyone will be restored to a perfect youthful body, and all those who are in the grave will be resurrected. This is the grand theme of the Bible. It is a perfect book from beginning to end. It was written by over 40 different authors over the span of some 1,600 years. Yet the books of the Bible are completely harmonious in every way. It is completely confirmed by science and history, and it makes accurate, reliable prophecy. Those facts alone are the most compelling to me that the Bible is from God, and that is why I believe it.
That's a very thought-provoking position. I have to say it is much more detailed than that of most Christians I've come across. It's quite obvious you've given this much thought.
Thank you. I have.
I have a few questions. First, you said that the Bible is completely perfect and harmonious from beginning to end. But what about all of the contradictions that are found in the text?
Well, lots of people have claimed there are contradictions in the Bible, but so far no one has been able to show me one.
Okay, what about the two conflicting creation accounts in Genesis? Chapter 1 says the animals were created before Adam, and that God created Adam and presumably Eve at the same time, although the account doesn't mention them by name. Chapter 2 says that there were no animals on earth when Adam was created, and that they were created to provide companionship, and only when he was still unsatisfied Eve was created. It says this was all done in a single day, as opposed to the 6 days in chapter 1.
That's a common objection. What you have to understand is that Genesis chapter 2 is a more detailed account of chapter 1. Chapter 1 gives the basic picture, while chapter 2 gives a more detailed account.
I've heard that answer before, but I find it unsatisfying. It completely ignores the fact that chapter 1 clearly says the animals were created before humans. Genesis 2 says that he created the animals after Adam was on the earth. If chapter 2 was a more detailed account, why does it contradict the summary account in chapter 1?
Well, it doesn't, but I'd be here all night showing you the answer to that.
That's fine. I'll leave it at that, but keep in mind you haven't convinced me the first two chapters of Genesis aren't contradictory. The second major contradiction I can think of is that of the genealogy of Jesus. In Matthew, Jesus is descended from David's son Solomon. In Luke, he is descended from David's son Nathan instead. From that point on, the two genealogies are completely different, until they reach Joseph, his supposed father. The accounts even differ on who Joseph's father was. Matthew says Jacob. Luke says Heli.
I've heard that one too. You see, Matthew's genealogy is Jesus' parentage through the line of Joseph, his stepfather. Luke's genealogy is through the line of Mary, his mother. In Luke, Heli is listed as Joseph's father because he was actually Mary's father, and the Jews didn't have a word for father-in-law back then.
While that is certainly possible, what evidence do you have, other than your desire for it to be true, to support your conclusion? It is just as likely that the two genealogies are made up by different authors who had not read each other's work, and were probably not even aware of it. And if they were trying to prove Jesus' lineage from David, why didn't both use what you claim to be Mary's genealogy? Joseph had no biological input when Jesus was supposedly conceived by Holy Spirit, so why would his family line matter at all?
Again, that's more research I'll have to do and get back with you later.
I appreciate your honesty. Admitting what you don't know takes a lot of courage sometimes.
We, as Jehovah's Witnesses, we all strive to be humble. We don't teach the doctrines of man like other churches. What we believe comes directly from God.
I'm sure you sincerely believe that, but I'm still not convinced.
Well, you haven't shown me any proof that God doesn't exist.
Well, that's not what I believe. To know if something doesn't exist would mean that I would have to know everything. I can't claim that, so I can't make the claim that God cannot exist.
I'm sorry, I thought you said you were an atheist. Doesn't what you just said make you an agnostic?
Absolutely it does. Have you read Thomas Huxley?
I'm not familiar with who that is.
He's the philosopher who coined the term agnosticism. When he did, he made the same mistake about atheism that you just did. He believed it to be the assertion that God doesn't exist. Although such a belief could rightly be called atheism, that is not the only possibility. The prefix of atheism means without, so atheism means literally without theism. If you can't say that you believe in God, then you are without theism, an atheist. Agnosticism is something else entirely. When Huxley coined the term, he referred to the Greek word gnosis. This didn't refer to general knowledge, but a very specific kind of knowledge, divine revelation. Thomas Huxley invented the term agnostic to describe someone who rejects all claims of absolute, divinely inspired knowledge. Since atheists don't believe in gods, believing in divine revelation from a god is contradictory, thus an atheist is necessarily an agnostic, although not all agnostics are necessarily atheists.
I've never heard that before. How interesting.
Thank you. My other objection to your original statement is that the Bible is completely scientifically accurate. I have a few passages that seem to contradict this idea. Can I share them with you?
Absolutely. There are a few Bibles on the shelf over here. I'll get them down.